Hi everyone, this is a screencast on the idea of globalization and a postmodern society. So the learning focus for this slide and what we'll be looking at in class will be on the sociological theory of postmodernity, and we'll be looking at the strengths and limitations of this approach and helping us understand society. So it's believed that modern society first emerged in the late 18th century, and with it came four major changes. First of all, the nation state. We started having more boundaries and more territory, and we identified ourselves within a certain nation state. We have our own national anthems, we have our own national flags, and we are very much governed by the national government within those states. So they have ideas about education and welfare, and these differ depending on which nation state you are actually in. With this also came the idea of capitalism. So globalization enabled capitalists to have more ownership of production, and also there was the introduction of labour and wages that came with that. So industrialization basically brought along this idea of modern society, and there was big changes. The national state play a big part in this because basically what they do is put laws and things in place which help capitalism operate and which help for the, inverted commas, exploitation of the proletariat. Modernity brought with it also technological breakthroughs and the idea of science over religion. We became a less religious-orientated society, and with that came the increase of science and technologies. The growth of industry, medicine, communications had major impact both socially and economically. And finally, and some say more importantly, is this idea of individualism. So we're moving away from this collective consensus value society which functionalists favour and talk of so much, and towards individual goals. And these changes our customs, they've changed our personalities, our own identity. We started to define our own identity. It wasn't ascribed as it was previously. It was based on what we could gain. The thing is with this, it also, you can't really move away from the fact that class structure has still remained quite important in identifying who you were. So although you weren't necessarily going to be staying as a working class farmer, if you were a working class farmer, then your identity would be kind of fixed to that. So, what is globalization? Well, you already know what globalization is: the ability to operate on a multinational scale in various ways. This came around because of technological changes, for instance. So our ability to communicate with people on the other side of the world, our ability to travel to the other side of the world in one day has had a major impact on how businesses and how people communicate with each other. And this has enabled people to work together collaboratively without ever actually meeting each other. This brings risks, as Beck talks about, and you'll see Beck a little bit later on, in that it actually creates environmental risks and global climate change and rising sea levels and problems like that. And this all comes about because of technology. So rather than threats to society be in nature, it's actually human-made. It's brought economic changes brought about globalization as well, in that because of this ability to communicate with each other, now we are also able to work economically with each other rather than within our own set nation states. We have the ability to sell goods, we have the ability to produce goods in different countries and sell them in another country, and these all have major impact on the fact that we can work globally. We have a 24-hour, we can buy things 24 hours a day now, online, offline, we can bank whenever we want, all of these things. This in turn, again, according to Beck, has brought a real risk society in that we just strive for profit rather than actually for people. And we're not bothered about the knock-on effects. So if we think about the banking crisis that happened, and that a lot of this was brought on by Lehman Brothers and other organisations in America, and this has had a knock-on effect in countries all over the world, not just within itself. There's been political changes as well, great political changes which has led to globalization. So we have countries now working together as part of the UN. We have the EU, which is more or less its own national state now, in that it has its own flag and national anthem, it has its own parliament, and this borderless world basically means that, according to the likes of Beck, etc., and this risk society, it's basically allowed transnational corporations to do what they want and to kind of take over the world without much kind of comeback from individual nation states because of the sign up to a collective. All of these things have had a major impact on culture and identity and globalization. And our identity and culture has changed because we now live in a Western world, so to speak. All of the companies that operate on TV and sell us things are generally Western owned, and they spread the ideas and cultures and norms and values of Western society. There's a McDonald's everywhere in the world now. You know, you can buy Western branded clothing anywhere in the world. You see people on TV, you know, even in areas like such as Nepal, when you see all the devastation that's happening at the moment. You know, the people walking around in Chelsea t-shirts and Man United shirts and stuff like that. So it's really shaped our culture and identity and how we feel about things. So why do these changes happen, and what explanations can we give? Well, first thing we're going to look at is the idea from postmodernists, who believe that we are in an era of postmodernity. And this is a very unstable and media-saturated society, which is certainly not together. And because of this, they believe that there's no true foundations to our knowledge. So we can question everything. There's no single theory or no single truth, and we can't really trust science to actually help us understand or improve society. These meta-narratives, as postmodernists talk about, claim absolute truth, but in truth they are just a version of a reality, and they can't actually be proven to be completely true. So in the eyes of the postmodernists, that everyone who holds a view, it's true to them. So we can't really critically analyse it because it's their version of events, and no one person's version is more real than someone else's. This knowledge that we're gaining, according to Baudrillard, is actually coming from technology and the media. And this can be quite dangerous because they're just about selling and trying to give us information, and not even products necessarily, but also sell us knowledge and how we should think and how we should actually act. And this could be, you know, through sales of products, but also through, like, say, soap operas and reality TV. The danger of this is that Baudrillard believes it creates something called hyper-reality, and this is where we start believing that fictitious things actually are reality, and we can't distinguish between the images that we're seeing and what is actually reality. And the impact of that is that we start questioning our culture and whether or not actually we should be behaving in this way. And that in turn leads to questioning actually of our identity. Baudrillard believes that this has an impact on us being able to shape our society, because if we can't actually understand what is going on, what the reality of the situation is, then we can't actually change it because we have no power to. So political kind of powers can continue to do what it is that they're doing without any fear of it being objective. Some quick evaluation of this post-modern explanation is that it ignores power inequality, and this is very from a Marxist viewpoint. So it doesn't really look at ruling classes using the media as a tool of domination. They're just talking about it in terms of applying knowledge. It assumes that there's a lack of distinction between reality and image. Does everyone actually, is everyone unable to clearly distinguish? And also, it's quite self-defeating, so that it's a theory that's been put forward which rejects other theories. So in turn, we should and could reject the postmodern explanation based on that. Theories of late modernity are slightly different to that of postmodernity in that they don't actually believe we're in a postmodern society. They just believe that society continues, and what we're seeing is actually just a change within society rather than a brand new postmodern era. Anthony Giddens speaks of two key things that have happened in modern society which can help us understand the changes. The first one is disembedding, and what he means by this is that we no longer work within a local context of interaction. We don't need face-to-face interaction, and because of technologies and things like that, it's actually become interactions more impersonal, and you don't actually need to hunt and seek them out. And sometimes you don't even need to speak to them at all. You can just send emails or texts or things like that. And because of that, it actually links to the idea of traditions and customs being less important and how we should act. Mainly because we don't actually act within our own tradition and customs. We've got to be aware of other people's, and it's kind of like a universal tradition and custom. Because of these traditions breaking down, we don't know necessarily how to act, and we're forced to become reflexive in that we are constantly monitoring and changing and modifying our actions based on the information, based on the people we're speaking to, based on the opportunities available, and all of these things actually, it's this reaction to being in a brand new society and acting differently as a result. Because of this, Giddens and also Ulrich Beck believes that we live in a risk society now, which is very much made by humans and human choice and individualization. These risks can manifest themselves in different things, so monetary risks, but also environmental risks, where in the past we only needed to worry about disease or famine or droughts and things like that, which were brought on by Mother Nature. We now actually live in a time where we manufacture these risks ourselves, and global warming can be an example of this. And although it might be a nature thing, it's actually man-made, and this is all because we are changing the way that we act and the way that we talk to each other. Also, the fact that we're flying all over the world and spending more time in aeroplanes, etc., is actually creating these issues and problems. That's not to say that we're not actually risk aware and risk conscious, because we are more conscious today about how our cultures are changing, and also how the impact of our globalization is having on the world. So, for instance, a lot more recycling and things like that. So we are actually aware of these changes, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we actually are making the big changes, basically because globalization of corporations are the biggest issue, not individuals actually making their mark on the world. A couple of evaluations of the late modernity theory is that it makes an assumption that we have the ability to be reflexive and to make the changes depending on our society. So, for instance, the poor are probably not able to actually move away from environmental risks because of lack of money. So they are actually there, and they've just got to deal with this modernity and not actually be reflexive to it. Also, Rustin believes that all of this idea about technology being at fault for environmental changes or for globalization in a more modern world is a load of rubbish. It's actually down to capitalism and the capitalist pursuit of profits at any cost and at all costs, which lead us to a risk society. It's not individual choices, and it's not individual movements that do that. Okay, that's the end of this screencast. Please make sure that you have also watched the one on conflict and also completed the homework as requested for this week. I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.